All right, you Gen Zers, let's finish strong here. Um, Although now we're going to get a little depressing. Sorry about that. Um, Poverty and aging. As you can see here, this was in 2017, and sorry, you got cut off at the bottom there. But in 2017, for supplemental poverty measure, um, and so like that's ultimately a little bit after help, you have 14% of the elderly population who are at or below the poverty line. And you remember from a couple of videos ago, the lady who was arguing about moving the poverty line. Every time you move the poverty line up to, or every time you move the poverty line, you put more or less people in poverty. And right now we're already at 14% of the people in poverty that are elderly. Richest nation in the world, best nation in the world for some people, and 1 in 7 of our elderly people are in poverty and really have no means of surviving without government assistance or something else like that. Huh. I think that's a pretty big indictment on the system that we live in. Um, as my other notes tell me, as of 2018, well, this is 2017 technically, but whatever. The official poverty measure, you have about 10% of elderly people living below the poverty line. Um, an additional 28% were just above the poverty line in the United States. Um, so, yeah, it's a massive problem that is going to come and rear its ugly head very soon. Because if the government can't keep up and the government can't pay for nursing homes and everything else like that for many of the elderly, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens really fast. Continuing on from here, not only do we have to worry about poverty as people age, but we also have to worry about elder abuse. Um, you have physical abuse as people are sometimes in nursing homes, but even, I mean, honestly, even from their kids or other caretakers that are meant to help. You have psychological abuse when caretakers give the silent treatment or intimidate individuals. Um, you have neglect, just intentionally failing to meet the needs of the older person. And then the financial abuse, misuse of funds, embezzlement, a lot of the scams that are done nowadays over the internet, over the phone, it's it's done targeting older people. Yes, that is how some people literally make a living by scamming old people. Um, and these are all problems. I'm not saying that they are, 90% of people fall into this category. I'm saying that they're big enough problems, though, that we really need to consider them and think about them. As people get older, they're more prone to be taken advantage of. They're more prone to suffer abuse than they were when they were normal functioning people. And now as they get older, they're seen as easy targets. Case in point, ageism. If you've never heard about that, it's just like racism, only based on race. Ageism based on age. Um, this last presidential election, as the New York Times points out, age will be the weapon that Joe Biden's opponents will use because basically that's all that they have. And you see it constantly. People attack Joe Biden's age because, if I remember right, he's the oldest president elected. Okay, well, Donald Trump would have been the oldest president, whoever won would have been the oldest president ever elected. But nobody was knocking Donald Trump at his age. At least it wasn't used by Joe Biden and others. But when it came to Joe Biden, many people were knocking his age. Why? Is he less of a person because he's old? Was Hillary less of a person because she was a woman when they ran for president? Like, it just pick anything, and that's what they're going to attack. And this one, it was his age. Oh, he's old. He can't be president. I'm not saying I want a 74, I think he is. I don't remember. However old he is. I'm not saying I want somebody that old necessarily running the country, but I don't think it makes him less of a person. And yet, read some of the reports and just how horrible he is because he just happens to be old. Okay, everybody who's president has been old in at least many people's eyes. So great, good job. You also have the black and white picture, the lady holding a sign treated like I was senile when she wanted a job. Gentleman in the middle passed over for being near retirement, wasn't given a job or a promotion. The other gentleman berated and called a waste of time because he was older. It happens. Old people, when they need jobs, they end up working at jobs that allow them to be what? Usually greeters. I doubt many older elderly people would be hired on to work construction. Why? Well, we don't need greeters on a construction site. We need young, physically able people. There are plenty of older people who are pretty physically able, but we don't see that. We see them as old, as infirm, as maybe even a little worth less than other people. So let's look at our theoretical perspectives. Functionalist perspective. Many functionalists focus on the disengagement theory, is what they call it. The disengagement theory suggests that elderly people withdraw from society and social relationships, and that is a natural part of aging. So as you get older, you just withdraw. Your friends are dying, your family has moved away, you just withdraw inward. Additionally, as people disengage, they then receive less pressure to conform to normal roles of people. I think of one lady that I visited as a vicar. When I would go do shutting calls with her, she asked me not to come before 11 a.m. And I'm like, why? And she said, well, when she was working, she was a teacher. She was up every morning by 5 in the morning so she could get in and get work done before the kids came in. And now that she was retired, now that she was done, she didn't want to get up early anymore. So I was asked not to come over before 11. That way she could just sleep and get up when she wanted to. She had disengaged. She wasn't working. She didn't have as many friends around. You get a lot of your friends, once you're out of college and you get a real job, you get a lot of your friendship base from that. Okay, now you're no longer working. Now you're at home a lot more. You start to disengage a little bit more and more. Functionalist perspective. That's the normal role of people as far as functionalists are concerned. And so they look at and they try to understand how that works. Conflict theory. Oh, come on now. This mouse doesn't like me today, sorry. Conflict theory basically says that there is a stratification based on age. Age stratification theory is what they call it. Like race and social class, people are stratified by age. And I mean to think of yourself. You are a Gen Zer. What is the greatest generation to you? Probably Gen Z. You're not going to say, oh, the baby boomers were the greatest, or oh, the Gen Xers are the greatest. And so even in our own minds, we start to create these different levels of stratification of our own generations and how we might rank them. In addition to that, think of the different levels of power and resources that are available to people. Gen Z has little power when it comes down to it. Why? Your oldest people are only 23. Most of your oldest people are still in college. Most of you don't vote. Most of you don't have real jobs. Some of your people are only 8. Like, what power do you have? Whereas think of Gen X or boomers or even millennials. Millennials are starting to turn out more in voting. They're the largest working population. They're the largest population. Like, they have a lot of power behind them coming up in the years. And so conflict theory would say that these generations are fighting for the resources, for the power that's out there, and how they're going to get that. Symbolic interactionism, our final one, they focus on what's called the subculture of aging theory. All right. And what this is that they want to focus on the shared community created by the elderly when they are otherwise excluded by age. One example is AARP, how that's a group that focuses on people solely because of their age. I forget, what's the cell phone company? No, I can't remember. There's a cell phone company that you have to be older to be a part of too. But I think of usually retirement communities, not nursing homes, but communities that people retire to. I know a couple who have retired to one in more southern Texas. And they just create their own little community, their own little culture there. And so symbolic interactionists want to understand how are these subcultures created amongst people who were part of a society, and now just because of their age, they're now part of this subculture, the sub society that's I mean, it's still part of the larger one. It interacts with it, but it's also its own little entity. Um, so yeah, that's how the different perspectives look at this. Please go watch the video about aging. Um, it's actually kind of fascinating seeing what is coming. And for you young folk, and even me as a younger folk, even though I'm almost 40, excuse me, be ready to take care of your parents. That's all that I have to say. Watch that video, you'll understand more, but be ready to take care of your parents as they get older. I'll see you in a couple minutes to talk about health.